Now, first, we're going to take a look at the general website mechanics. We're going to start off by looking at the real physical aspects of your website, the changes that you can make in order to improve the conversion rate. So, tip number one is that you need to check how fast your page load on a 28K modem. Now, I know that a 28K modem is not very popular these days. Most people would either be at linked to the internet using a 56K modem or broadband. But still, if your website loads very quickly on a 28K modem, it means therefore then that it would load like a flash of lightning on a broadband connection. It means therefore then that if you can take care of those persons who are still on dial-up and your page loads fast for them, it means that you have automatically taken care of those who are also on a broadband connection. Now, I've found that at netmechanics.com, at this website right here, you can go to this website and you can input your website address, and the website here, service here, would actually run for free for a website that has, I think, less than 20 pages. It would run for free and tell you how fast your website loads. So you do not actually have to go to someone or go to a place that uses dial-up connection in order to find out how fast your entire website would load on a 28K modem. So it means therefore then that this is a very useful tool that I've found that you can use in order to determine how fast your website loads. And the key here is that you want your website to load as fast as possible. If your website doesn't load very quickly, it means therefore then that you're losing visitors. So tip number one, check how fast your page loads on a 28K modem. And the ideal here is that you'll need to bring this under 20 seconds or a half a minute the most. Now, if you were to check your AW stat, those of you who have that kind of a service, there's one section that we refer to as the visit duration. And here I have a snapshot from one of my website that indicates how long each visitor spends at the website. And here I have that, for example, that 78.5%. I have 75.9% of the visitors actually remain at the website for less than 30 seconds. Now, if this number here goes above 90% or 95%, I would like to assume that it's a possibility. One of the possibilities is that your website doesn't load quickly enough. So it means therefore then that people do not hang around your website long enough to even read what's on your website. This could also be an indication that you do not have a strong enough headline, but that is something that we'll come to later on. But going into your AW stats to look at your website statistics is an important feature that you can use in order to determine how long someone stays on your website. And if this number here goes above 90%, it's very likely that your website is not loading quickly enough. Now we go on to our second tip, and that is you need to check to see how your website appears in other browsers and on other monitors. Now, if you have more than one monitor at home or in your office, this can be easily be done, or you can change the resolution on your monitor in order to see how your website would appear. But also, the two most popular browsers we have today is the Mozilla Firefox and also Internet Explorer. So normally when I've completed a website, I would pull up that website in Internet Explorer and pull up the website also in Mozilla in Firefox in order to determine how the website appears. Now, a rule of thumb is that you should always keep the little guy in mind. Those persons who still have the 12-inch monitor that's set as 640 by 480 resolution, if you design your website at a fixed pixel, say 700 by 600, then those surfers with smaller monitors will have to scroll across just to see the entire breadth of your web page. So in other words, then instead of setting your website as at a fixed width and height, rather than using the percentage for the width. Be careful for those persons who have smaller monitors, because it simply means that in order to read the entire line of a sentence to go right across, it is very annoying for the person using the website to have to scroll back and forth. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. Next tip is that you should make sure that your font type and size are easily readable and available. Now here is where we can learn a lot from direct marketers, because they seldom divert from the 12-point Courier font. Why? Because it is easy to read. Sans serif type fonts work very well online, such as Verdana, Arial, and Tahoma. Now, all fonts, you must know, are not available on all computers. So if in designing your website you use a font that is not available on your client computer, it means therefore then that that client computer will try to make a substitute for that font, and it may not turn out to be your website may not turn out to look the way that you intended it to. So make sure that you use fonts that are readily available on all computers. Now, the style of font that you are reading now in sans serif, and sans serif simply means that at the end they are not the little curticles that you would normally have, as such as in the serif fonts. Next, we need to go easy on those bandwidth hungry graphics. And again, this goes back to point number one, or tip number one, where the load time of your website is so important. So try to avoid using graphics just to have a pretty website. In most cases, pictures do not help to sell to your visitors. Of course, there are a few exceptions. If you're a photographer, you would most likely have samples of your work on your website. And so there are cases where indeed you cannot really get away from using high quality graphics on your website. But be sure to make the graphics as small as possible so that they can download quickly to your client's computer. Next, keep your background image in the background. Now, a plain white text background would serve you best. Make sure that your background image or the watermarks are not competing with the text. The first law of art is contrast. So if you have gray colored font against a black background, you are simply driving your visitors away. And I've seen many websites where they have a colored background and a colored text. It simply means then it's a strain on the visitor's eye in order to read what the text is saying. As in this simple presentation, you realize that I have a white background. Why? Because it is simply easier to read. And if your website is difficult to read, your sales message cannot be comprehended, it means therefore then that you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Next, avoid those flashy flash introductions. Again, time is a big factor on the web, and flash presentations take time to load. This is not a criticism of the flash program itself. However, when this is the first thing that your visitor hits with, wait while your movie loads, he can quickly lose patience. So here again, we are looking at the general mechanics of your website that can drive away or keep visitors. And time is the biggest factor online. No one wants to sit around waiting for 2-3 minutes for your presentation to load. They would most likely click away. Then, make your site navigation easy and simple to follow. Now, Steve Krug in his book, Don't Make Me Think, A Common Sense Approach to Web Usability, states that the first law of usability is don't make me think. He explains that when your visitor comes to your website, if he or she thinks that they have to work through how to navigate your site, you will only frustrate them. Now, an ideal navigation system is simple, it's intuitive, and it's consistent. Those are the three characteristics of any ideal navigation system. It must be simple, it must be intuitive, meaning that the visitor can just look at the navigation system and without even thinking know that this is a navigation system, and it must be consistent, in other words, from page to page. So in other words then, if you have your navigation buttons on the left hand side of your website going down in a straight column, it means therefore then that all of your web pages, all of the pages on your website should have the navigation system the same place. And that is what we mean simply by consistent. Now, we have some examples of navigation systems that are very, very intuitive, and simply because they borrow their idea from something that has already been used in the physical world. So here we have an idea in the physical world that is borrowed for the virtual world. And tabs are rated as the best style of navigation. Now, for example, here we have the navigation tabs being used by Amazon.com. And here we have the tabs being used by Barnes & Noble. And the reason why these companies, they use tab for their navigation system, simply because users find them very easy and obvious to use. And tabs are what you normally find in any kind of a filing system in an office. Okay. Now, when each tab is selected, it becomes highlighted. So in this case, we see here that we see here that books are highlighted when it's selected. Here we see that welcome is highlighted when it is selected. So the website visitor, just by looking here, would always know where he is by just looking at the top of the page. Now, rated second embedded text link. And here we have an embedded text link where you can always tell where you are. So here you have home, buy, baby, diapering, baby wipes. So you know therefore then that right now you are at baby wipe warmers. That's in diapers. That's under the section of babies, and you're in the section where you can buy. So this is the embedded text link is also rated the second best in terms of how you can set up your navigation system. Next, location matters. It is not just what you say, but where you say it. What do I mean by this? Now, for example, one company reported that when they placed a short statement, "We value your privacy," next to their newsletter subscription box, there was a marked increase in signups. Why? Because this was the point at which the client was most concerned about how their information would be used. So it simply means, therefore, then, that not only should you present information to your visitors, but that information must be presented at a point when the visitor would be concerned about that particular information. So in other words, therefore, then, that since you are asking the person to opt into your service or newsletter, that is going to be a point at which they are going to be concerned about their privacy. And so therefore, you make sure that you place a statement there with regard to your privacy. So location matters. Not only must you present information, but that information must be contextual. It must be important to the person at that very point in the process. Next, without reading one line of text, your website should exude a message through its design and feel. And this has a lot to do with aesthetics. And it's a simple case where form should match function. Your site must say, "This is a shopping website," or "This is a music fan site," or your visitors should not have to guess for too long at least what category you fall in. This would be accomplished through proper use of color, layout, font, and other technology. Now, you are in trouble if your tax attorney site says Britney Spears. And we can look at a few examples. This website says kids all the way. The choice of font and the color, and notice the tab. Notice also the tab's navigation system, again, because it is so simple as well. And this happens to be the PBS kids website. So you come to this website and right away you know that this website is saying, you notice that this website is saying this is a website for kids, just from the use of primary colors, just from the kind of a font that is used. We have the tabs here, and everything is making it attractive and simple for kids to use. Now, the best example I find where form meet function is the Google homepage. Now, just for comparison, let us look at the Google homepage and compare that to that for Yahoo, the Yahoo homepage. Now, the beauty about the Google homepage is that when you arrive at the Google homepage, you are met with the Google logo, and there are some text link, and then there you have the search box. Now, you can have no question about what is the purpose of this web page. It is simple, it is direct, and it is powerful. No wonder that Google has risen to being the most trafficked website when it comes to a search engine. Now, compare this to the Yahoo homepage. The Yahoo homepage is filled with advertisement, and I mean, they try to pack everything that's possible on that on the front page. And here you literally have to search in order to find the Yahoo search box. But compare this here to that of Google, and you realize that right away, right in the center, you know you come to Google, and the purpose you are here at Google is to make a search. And I think that Yahoo would do well if they take a sample or a leaf out of the book of Google. And instead of making their homepage so busy, they would make their homepage as simple as Google has theirs. Now, next tip is that you should use an invisible stats counter. Now, sites that have a big stats counter may have turned heads a couple of years ago, but a counter is no longer considered cool. So use an invisible counter instead. And I've seen many cases where someone may have a large counter at the stats counter at the bottom of their website, and it is to impress visitors that my website is so popular. But there was a time when this was considered really fancy, but not anymore. So please depend on the stats that is provided by your web service provider in order to see what your stats are. Next, make sure that your site prints well. Offer a printer-friendly version of your website if you cannot sacrifice some kind of a layout feature for its printability. For example, you see here from one of my websites that I would offer the option for the client to actually print the website, which happens in this case to be a sales letter. And this is even better than asking them to bookmark my website, because when they physically print my website, it means therefore then that they get physically involved with my website, and they would save this sales message. So as much as possible, always offer your website visitors an option to print your website. And even if you have to use two different versions of your website, one that is for the graphics and the aesthetics, and one that is for the printer, do offer a printer-friendly version for your website. Next is that make sure that your website is scannable. What do you mean by this? It means that when someone comes to your website for the first time, they would actually scan through your website to see if there is information that they are interested in. So those who do usability testing report that surfers generally scan your website rather than read through it from top to bottom. What does this mean for you? It means that you need to highlight, underline, color, bold those keywords that tell what your website is all about. And here I have a small screenshot from one of my sales letter, and note here that I've highlighted one paragraph. Here you see bolding. Here you see some anchor text, some links to other sections of my website. But what I've tried to do here is that I've tried to pick out the important points that I need the person who is scanning through to read. And hopefully, as they read these different key points, it would pull them in to read the entire website. So always try to make your website scannable. Help the person that's coming to the website, that's reading your website, to be able to tell what your website is all about right away. Now, Jakob Nielsen, Alertbox, May 14, 2002, did some eye tracking study of web readers, and these were the main findings. And Jakob Nielsen actually is the standard when it comes to research in how people use the web. Now, these are the important main findings that he found. He's found that text attracts attention before graphics. In fact, it says of the user's first 3 eye fixation on a page, only 22% were on graphics and 78% were on text. So it means, therefore, then that it is so important, therefore, then to spend your time in the written word, the text that is on your website, rather than on the graphics. Although graphics help, 22% is not bad, but 78% is the words that actually do the selling. He says, keep your headlines simple and direct, and that is something that we're going to come back to afterwards. Also, he says that shallow reading combined with selected depth. What does it mean? It was more than 3 times as common for users to limit their reading to a brief as opposed to reading a full article. Even when reading a full article, users only read about 75% of the text. Text needs to be scannable, as I mentioned before, but it also needs to provide the answers that the users are seeking. So the user does some shallow reading, some quick reading along your website before they decide, well, I'm going to actually sit down and read this entire article or read this entire website. And he also found that the habit of web surfers, he found interlaced browsing, meaning that the users in this study frequently alternated between multiple sites. They would read something in one window, then they would switch to another and visit another site, and then they return to the first window and read some more first if possible before they turn to the second window. Now, all these are studies that gives us results in how people actually behave when they come to our website, how they use the web. And we need to be able to use all of these facts in order to better improve our conversion rate.